going on? What's going on? Welcome to the After Hours podcast. Hold on, let me open up the curtain. There we go. Welcome to the After Hours Reaction TV podcast show. You already know what it is. Back with another reaction, but this time, excuse me, I got a lot of stuff going on, but this time, you know, it's around that time or whatever, and you know, got the horror stories for you. But this time it's an animated story. Somebody's gonna be talking over, narrating the story, and we're gonna listen. I've been watching a few of them. I haven't seen this one. Like I always say, I don't watch this stuff, so just let y'all know I haven't seen this one. But on the promotional platform, go check out everything. You already know what I've been doing. Check it out. Spread the word, whatever you want to do. Rewatch, whatever. Cool. But yeah, so we about to hop into something different, like always. You know what I'm saying? So let's get it started. And happy Halloween for those who celebrate stuff like that.
Do you know what it feels like to have a gun aimed at you? To hear the sickening crack of a bullet through bone? To see blood spurt like a crimson fountain? Before that Halloween, I didn't. I was just a sweet kid who loved candy, trick-or-treating and dressing up in costumes. You notice how I'm speaking in the past tense? That's because something happened. Something that shattered my love for Halloween forever. I'm only 16 now, but after that horrific night, I carry enough trauma for a lifetime. We are too old for this, Josh grumbled as I dragged him along. Josh was my best friend, but he hated Halloween. Don't be a buzzkill. I can't go trick-or-treating alone, I pleaded, shaking my candy bag at him. We're only 13 once. Let's enjoy it while we can. We can't hit up the cool Halloween parties like our brothers, Josh asked, pouting, the feelers on his bee costume bobbing. I shot him a stern look, and he wilted under my glare. That's the thing about Josh. He'd follow along with anything if I insisted hard enough. We hit a couple of houses and loaded up on candy. Bouncing from porch to porch, decorations were amazing. Jack-o'-lanterns glowing, creepy scarecrows looming, fake cobwebs strung everywhere. I felt great in my Tinkerbell costume, but Josh, his attitude didn't seem to improve. Then, as we rounded the corner, Josh's face lit up. "Hey, that's my dad!" he yelled. Sure enough, it was Mr. Morrison, dressed like a pirate, complete with an eye patch and a fake parrot on his shoulder. "Hey kids, having fun?" he asked, grinning. "We're doing great, Mr. Morrison," I said, showing him my overflowing bag of candy. "Why are you out here?" "I'm trick-or-treating for Jenny," he replied. "She's too young to come this far, so I'm getting her a little candy." He held up a small bag and winked. "Awesome! Let's hit that house together," Josh said, pointing to an unlit house down the street. I stopped. Something about that house chilled me. It was dark, with no decorations, and the yard was filled with broken bottles and scattered debris. A cold shiver crept down my spine as my heart started to race. I thought, just for a moment, I heard something. A voice, soft, raspy, almost like a deathly whisper, echoed in my mind. I couldn't make out any words, just an unintelligible sound that made my blood freeze. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Josh and his dad just looked at me, confused. But I heard it again, or at least I was sure I did. That same monotone whisper. "Let's go home," I said quietly, dread setting into my stomach. "Go home? You're the one who dragged me out here," Josh laughed, bounding towards the eerie house. Mr. Morrison followed close behind, and I reluctantly trailed after them, my heart pounding in my chest. "Trick or treat!" they yelled at the door. Laughing, the silence that followed was deafening. And then, under the barrage, gunshot echoed through the night. It took me a second to understand what was happening. I dropped to the ground, covering my head. But I wasn't fast enough. A bullet tore into my shoulder, and a sharp, unbearable pain shot through me. The gunfire didn't stop. It went on for what felt like forever. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the shooting ceased. A man stumbled out onto the porch, holding a smoking AK, his face pale and twisted with regret. I thought it was them," he stammered. I thought it was the ops. I'm so sorry." His eyes fell onto something near my feet. His face crumbled. I followed his gaze and froze. Josh was lying on the ground, his eyes wide open, lifeless. Blood pooled around him, 2 bullet holes marring his skull. There was no mistaking it. He was dead. A single scream cut through the night. Josh's father, lying a few feet away, bleeding from his wounds, sobbed uncontrollably. "My boy! My boy!" The police and the EMTs arrived shortly after. The man who shot at us was a gang member, paranoid and expecting an attack from his enemies. He thought we were them. A mistake. But Josh was still gone. My shoulder healed, but the pain in my heart never left. Sometimes, I wonder if it was my fault for dragging Josh out that night. Other times, I think about what I thought I saw and heard, and none of it made any sense. While this story is fictional, it was inspired by real events. On Halloween 2008, 12-year-old TJ Darnson was shot and killed while trick-or-treating. After knocking on a door, the shooter, a convicted drug dealer, mistook TJ for an enemy and fired 29 rounds. So next time you go trick-or-treating, be careful of the houses you approach, please. None of us want to be turned into Swiss.
Oh yeah. To second that, I don't know if anybody grew up on this rule when you go Halloween trick-or-treating. First of all, the house wasn't lit up. So if the house not lit up, don't even approach the house. So that's where they fucked up in the first place. Like, they shouldn't even went to a dark house. That's why people turn their lights off, so they don't want to be bothered by trick-or-treaters. So if the house is dark, don't walk up to it. So if he would have never walked up to that house, I mean, he might have still been kind of living. Like, you know what I'm saying? Nobody would have got shot. Dude would have carried on his paranoia with somebody else. So for those that may be watching this or whatever, tell y'all kids, don't go to no houses that are dark. That's the number one sign to tell people, don't bother me. I'm not handing out candy. I don't celebrate Halloween. They turn the lights off. So yeah, I don't know, man. That was just a missed call going bad, and I'm sorry that somebody had to lose their life, but I ain't know that. Damn, that was deep. I ain't know that shit was gonna go like that though.
When I woke up in the hospital, the first thing on my mind was Freddy Krueger. I know that probably sounds super weird, but trust me, you'll understand why once you hear the rest of my story. Just 5 hours before I found myself in the hospital bed, I had been at a Halloween college party. It was one of those no costume, no entry deals. So I was decked out in a tunic like the ones the Greeks used to wear, complete with a masquerade ball mask. I don't remember much about what was going on at the party. Just there was a ton of beer, loud music, and people dancing everywhere. "People just keep coming in!" Ethan shouted over the music. Well, what did you expect? I shouted back, grinning. You advertised it as an open party. He scowled at me, clearly regretting the decision. Ethan, my best friend, who had thrown the party but hadn't anticipated the massive turnout. He gave me a look before heading outside, probably to lock the gate. I shrugged it off and went back to dancing. With each sip of beer, I could feel myself getting more and more drunk. After a while, I made my way outside, needing a break from the crowded and sweaty house. The yard was quieter, with a few people passed out on the lawn. What a bunch of losers, I thought to myself. I looked over for Ethan and spotted him by the gate with his brother, Eric. Something was going on, so I moved closer to see what was happening. You have to let us in, mate, a guy dressed as Freddy Krueger was shouting. Behind him were a few others dressed as classic horror movie characters. Jason, Michael Myers, and Ghostface, just to name a few. They were all demanding entry. I don't know you, you're not invited, get the hell away from my house. Ethan shot back, clearly agitated. A small crowd from the party was starting to gather by the gate, curious about the commotion. We're not going anywhere, Freddy said, his tone dripping with anger. Something about the way he said it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Sure, getting denied entry to a party sucks, but his reaction felt off. Way too aggressive for someone we didn't even know. Ethan, let's just go back inside, I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. You're right. We'll leave these idiots out here and see how they like the cold. He agreed, turning to follow me. I said, let us the f*** in! Freddy screamed. The noise from the party suddenly seemed to fade. It was like the whole world went silent for a moment, and an eerie tension settled over us. I don't know if everyone felt it, but I sure did. Duck! I screamed, diving into the ground as Freddy pulled a gun from somewhere in his costume and started shooting. The sounds of gunfire was deafening. Screams filled the air as people scattered in every direction, glass shattering as bullets hit windows and cars. I felt a sharp, burning pain in my arm and looked down to see blood seeping through my costume. I had been shot. It all happened so fast. Less than a minute, but it felt like a lifetime. When I finally dared to look up, Freddy and his gang were gone, leaving several people on the ground. My heart sank when I saw Ethan lying there, unmoving. I rushed over to him. He wasn't conscious. Eric and another guy were also down, none of them moving. The ambulance arrived minutes later and rushed them to the university hospital. It wasn't until the medics were gone when I realized I'd been shot too. Shock does that to you. Fortunately, the wound wasn't too bad. The bullet had just grazed my arm, but I knew I needed to get it checked out. So, I got into my car and I started to drive to the hospital. That's when everything hit me. How close I'd come to dying. My hands started shaking, and all I could feel was the panic rising into my chest. My heartbeat raced as my vision blurred. I don't know if it was the blood loss, the alcohol, or both, but I suddenly felt so tired. I lost control of the car and crashed into a building. Then, everything went black. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in the hospital, Freddy Krueger on my mind. Makes sense now, right? I'm just grateful Ethan, Eric, and the other guy who got shot are all okay. They're stable at least. As for Freddy and his friends, no one knows where they went after the shooting. It scares me to think that someone that unhinged is still out there, somewhere. This story is inspired by real events that happened in 2008 in San Antonio, Texas. During a Halloween college party, a man dressed as Freddy Krueger opened fire after being denied entry. 4 people were rushed to the hospital, while the 5th, a female, drove herself but later crashed her car on the way. Freddy Krueger was the one who pulled the trigger, but he was not alone. And although the perpetrators were eventually apprehended, the incident remains a chilling reminder of how sometimes the people under the mask are worse than the characters they cosplay in Halloween.
Now with this story, this was just idiocy. Am I the way I feel about it? Because I'm like, man, if you ain't invited, man, just go the fuck on, man. Like, what was the big deal? Like, okay, yeah, it was an open party, whatever, but he might have got some strange vibes from you. I don't know, but it was, I mean, it was kind of weird on both hands because you let anybody in, but when they came, you didn't want to let them in. But I mean, that's why you gotta follow your gut too. So, but when you throwing parties, man, you gotta realize that stuff like this can happen. Like, people are unpredictable and stuff like this can happen, and especially on Halloween, man, people feel like that's like purge night or something. They feel like they can just go around and terrorize civilians and put on, because they can put on a mask and shit and get away with it. Like, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, this is in a party too, so that's fucked up. That's fucked up. But they said they was caught, so at least they was caught. But yeah, man, like, if you ain't invited to no parties, man, don't go in there and shoot the motherfucker up, man. We don't need we don't need all that shit, man. Let's go to a bar, go down the street, some shit, man. Like, I don't understand the purpose of that. What was the purpose? That's all I'm saying. There was no purpose of shooting up a fucking party because you can't get into it. I don't know why people do like that. I don't know why people act like that. Like, they just, when they feel the rejection, they just go crazy. Oh, you know who the fuck I am? Man, come on, man, with all that goofy ass shit, man. Like, that shit wild. So let's go to the next one.
The moon hung high in the sky, casting a gentle glow over the crowded streets of Quebec. Everywhere I looked, people were dressed in costumes, rushing through the night. Immersed in the Halloween spirit, I too was excited and swept up by the excitement. Moving from the house to house, shouting trick or treat. I was wearing a brown costume and a white bunny costume. Casey and Paul were with me. The 3 of us had been best friends since kindergarten. When you're 12, Halloween is all about costumes and candy. You don't think about its dark origins or the eerie legends that linger. But that night, I learned more than I ever wanted to, and since then, I've never gone out trick-or-treating again. I think we have enough candy, Cassie said, showing us her bag, brimming with sweets of all kinds. No, we could do a couple more houses, I replied, walking up the stairs of another house, forcing her and Paul to follow me. A nice old lady answered the door and handed us a bunch of sweets with a warm smile. As we made our way down the stairs, Paul tugged at my sleeve, his expression uneasy. Guys, I think it's getting late. We should head back, Paul said, his eyes darting nervously around. Casey sighed. Yeah, I got more than enough. Look at my bag. It's about to burst. I scoffed. My eyes. Come on, Paul shook his head. No, really, I can't eat all of this candy. Fine, leave then, I said, pushing ahead towards the next house. Cassie hesitated for a second, before shrugging and following Paul as they walked off. I watched them leave, annoyed. Determined to get one last haul, I walked up the steps to a house at the end of the block. It was dimly lit, its porch creaking beneath my feet. I rang the doorbell, but heard no movement inside. Just as I turned to leave, a police officer passed by on the street. Hey kid, he called out. You should head home, it's getting late. I glanced back at him. Yeah, okay, I muttered, not really intending to listen. But as he walked away, something changed. The festive sounds of laughter and footsteps faded away, replaced by an eerie, suffocating silence. Stopped in my tracks, a strange feeling settled in my chest. Like I wasn't alone. Like someone was watching me. The air thickened, and I realized a thick fog had crept in out of nowhere, swirling around me. Suddenly, from within the fog, 2 glowing red eyes appeared. My heart pounded as the eyes drew closer, cutting through the mist-like fire. As the fog dissipated, a figure emerged, tall, imposing, clad in full samurai armor. At first, I almost laughed. Nice costume, I thought. But then, I saw it. The katana in his hand, dripping with fresh blood. I froze, my brain screaming at me to run, but my legs refused to move. "Sick fit, man!" someone shouted from behind me. I turned to see a guy in a cartoon character costume approaching the samurai, grinning like he didn't have a care in the world. Without a warning, the samurai lashed out, slashing the man's throat with a swift, precise motion. Blood sprayed everywhere, splattering onto my clothes, into my candy bag. The man collapsed, gurgling, clutching his neck as the crimson life drained from him. I stood there, paralyzed, watching as the life drained out of him. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. My mind couldn't process what was happening. It was real. Too real. Across the street, a woman saw the attack. She screamed. The samurai turned his head, slowly, locking eyes with her. In an instant, he was upon her, his katana slicing through the air. She fell to the ground, her clothes blooming with blood, as she gasped for air. I watched, horror-stricken, my body trembling uncontrollably. I wanted to shout. I wanted to run, to do something, anything. But I was frozen. The fog swirled again, thick and unrelenting, swallowing the samurai whole until he disappeared, like a ghost retreating into the night. The silence returned, heavier than before, pressing down on me like a weight. I collapsed to the ground, curling into a ball, shaking uncontrollably. When the police found me, I couldn't speak. My clothes were stained with blood, my candy bag soaked. Of the samurai, there was no trace. They asked me questions, but all I could do was stare into the distance, shivering. Later, I learned the man in the samurai armor had killed 2 people and injured 5 before he was caught, but the knowledge did not bring me any comfort. Since that night, I've never gone out trick-or-treating again. This story is inspired by a real event that took place in Quebec City, Canada, on Halloween night back in 2021. A man dressed in medieval armor went on a violent rampage, killing 2 people and injuring 5. The 24-year-old suspect had been driven by dark, twisted urges and was seemingly out for blood. Disturbingly, he had made threats about carrying out such attacks nearly for 6 years. The tragedy left the city in shock, and its chilling nature serves as the backdrop for this fictional retelling, capturing the fear and horror experienced that night.
Man, that still don't explain why his eyes was red. But that's like I was saying, people on Halloween go on these purge, like I said, purges, man. Like some people take Halloween too far, and some people, like I said, they look at it all as a chance to just put makeup on and go scare people and have parties. Most people have parties amongst their family, and they watch scary movies and just do little stuff like that. A lot of people probably ain't going trick or treating no more and stuff like that. And one, because COVID had popped up, and then all this other extra shit, people kidnapping people. Well, that's been going on, but it's just been a lot, I guess, a lot more heavier here lately. But and recall on candy and stuff like that. So a lot of people don't really trust the whole trick and treat trick or treat process anymore. I know as a kid, I used to trick or treat. You know what I'm saying? When I got a chance, I slip out. I think I trick or treat till I was like almost a senior in high school, man. Because that's how it was free candy. Shit. Well, not a senior. I wouldn't say a senior. I say like about I had a job, so I say sophomore, junior year, maybe. That's when I stopped doing that. But you know, it's just one of them things that if you was raised right around some of these holidays, then you won't frown upon them and just be like, oh, that's that. Like you take it for what it is. Yeah, it's meant to be this, but we turn it into this. Like that's all it is. Like you know what I'm saying? All the holidays is like that. Like I said on my shows last year, yeah, we all know they pagan holidays and shit like that, but you take what you get out of them so you can just have the best positive experience that you can get out of them. That's it. Some people like to dress up around Halloween just to so they can actually just be what they want to be on that day, and you know, it's just another stamp of, I guess, uh, freedom. I guess, you know what I'm saying? Cosmetic freedom. That's all, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't want to talk too much in the beginning or during these videos because I didn't want to take too much from them. But I just give you my reaction at the end of the stories and stuff. But most of these stories I be watching are true, as you can see, and you just gotta watch yourself out there. People are crazy, and like the man, like I said, protect yourself, man. Just protect yourself. Like that's all I can say. People are twisted. They got all type of different beliefs, and it's a fucked up world we live in now. But let that be that. You know what I'm saying? This is the end of tonight's show. Like I said, I just want to slide this in there real quick so y'all had a Halloween episode from me, you know, or whatever. And I'm gonna try to come back with some more reactions for you. Stay dangerous. Love y'all. Peace.